Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and senior information communication technology leader from Brisbane, Australia, Mr. Chaniel Ramos. Chaniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh, and good day, everyone.
Thank you. Chaniel is, as I mentioned, an ICT leader with over 20 years experience in project management, service delivery, operations, and consulting. He is passionate about developing leaders and high-performing self-managing teams. So, Chaniel, my first question is, can you share the journey that led you to become an ICT leader in global organizations across various industries?
All right. Again, good day, everyone. So I actually started out my career in ICT as an individual contributor, primarily as a programmer,
Mhm.
in a technology company. During that time, I realized that mainframe is one of the key legacy systems being used by different organizations. And then I realized that, I thought that mainframe may not be for me. And so I moved on to another technology company wherein I work as an SAP consultant,
Mhm.
technology consultant, if you like. And then I moved up the ranks from being a leader up to a service delivery manager, and then started managing people. Um, so it was in that technology company that I grew my leadership career. And then almost 10 years in that company, I moved on to another organization, an Australian bank.
Mhm.
In that organization, I work in the capacity of operations manager for two divisions,
Mhm.
one in their retail banking division and the other one in their business services division. And then moving on, I actually moved to Australia here in Brisbane about less than 4 years ago. And from then up to now, I've been working as a consultant in different organizations in different
Wonderful.
industries.
Wonderful. So, Shanil, what strategies do you employ to ensure exceptional customer service in the fast-paced and ever-evolving ICT sector?
I would like to say that I'm an old school
Mhm.
leader and a person. So I use a strategy that's not rocket science. It's called the MAKE.
Mhm.
So you might have heard of that. So define, measure, analyze, improve, and control.
Mhm.
So it's a core tool used in Six Sigma projects. Because for me, you cannot improve something that you cannot measure.
Mhm.
So just very quickly, these for defining what the problem is. Um, then once you've defined the problem, then you go and quantify that problem by measuring that.
Mhm.
And then you move on to gather data, you analyze that data, and then ultimately you identify the cause of the problem.
Mhm.
Once you've identified the root cause,
Mhm.
then you design, develop solutions, you test them, and then you implement them and you verify the solution. So that's where improve comes in.
Mhm.
And then lastly, you maintain that solution so that it keeps going as a well-oiled machine and you control that moving forward.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's what I use.
And based on your own vast experience, what are some of the key factors in building and maintaining high-performing self-managing teams?
Um, so for me, what's important is that um, three things. Number one, your team have to trust you first and foremost. So you have to build on that emotional bank account, especially when you're new to the team. So how do you do that? You lead by example so that people trust you. You gain their trust and respect. So that's number one, trust. So number two, once you've gained their trust, you move on to empowering your team. So how do you uplift their capability to do their work effectively? So I'm a firm believer in terms of training, being a trainer myself.
Mm.
So by uplifting their capability, you give them the power or the authority to do something on their own.
Right.
And then lastly, number three, um, you develop people to build accountability or
Right.
that sense of ownership so that they are able to do things on their own. And then you give it back by trusting them as
Mm.
well. So
Mm.
for me, these three, trust, empowerment, and accountability, are key to building high performing self managing
Mm.
teams.
Well said. And Shanil, how do you adapt your own leadership style when you work across different cultures and different geographical landscapes?
So I'm a firm believer and champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm.
So in all of my dealings, whether it's a leadership or just day-to-day dealing with your peers or even with your um, uh, uplines, I make sure that I adopt my leadership or management style depending on the situation, the culture, the location, the person, or the team. So some styles I've employed would be being empathetic,
Mhm.
being directive, or being authoritative.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example. Um, I was a practice lead in one of my organizations,
Mhm.
and I've had 8 consultants that I've been working with at that
Mm.
time. Some of them are junior, some of them are senior, but with the more junior ones, I tend to utilize an empathetic kind of leadership style. So I have a certain set of agenda in my regular catch-ups wherein I let them discuss or share their highlights and lowlights.
Mm.
And then for the highlights, we celebrate them. For the lowlights, I make sure to support them and remove blockers as necessary. And
Mhm.
that's where I provide support, coaching, and mentoring
Mm.
to his team.
Very
So
interesting.
that's
Very
an
interesting.
example.
Great response. Thank you. Can you also tell us a little bit about a time when you had to pivot or change strategy mid-project, and what did you learn from these experiences?
Good question. I was working as a consultant in one of the rail organizations here in Australia. So we were doing a data quality and governance project, and I was working with key business stakeholders, architects, as well as a vendor to implement the solution. The project had 2 phases and was planned to run for, I believe, about 12 weeks, as I remember. So the project has a set scope, schedule, and a budget. The situation was that the first stage or gate of the project
Mm.
had delays, um, causing a need for an extended or change in schedule. So, as an action, being the project manager, I work with a vendor to make sure we mitigate that issue and we report that accordingly. And then in my dealings with the vendor, they agreed and were happy to extend the project schedule as well as the resources for the same project scope and delivering it for the same
Mm.
cost.
Mm.
So that was good, I would say.
Yeah.
However, the most challenging part for me then was obtaining buy-in and alignment from the key business stakeholders in the business.
mm,
And to me, that's almost the always the challenging part
mm,
in
mm,
any project that I've dealt with is it's getting stakeholder buy-in and
mm,
approval.
mm,
And so in one of the steerco meetings, I presented uh, the issue, the problem, and the solution. So I came in together with the vendor, but I've actually highlighted what's in it for them. So
mm,
there will be delays in the project. However, if they agreed to extend the schedule of the project goals will still be met
mhm,
within their expected time frame by the end of the fiscal year. So the project will get extended for about 2 or 3 weeks as baseline, but the goals and outcome ultimately will still be realized.
mm,
So that enabled me to get the buy-in of the key business stakeholders, and the project was delivered accordingly. So the key learning for me there, and as always in all of my projects, is the importance of stakeholder management and making sure you get alignment from key stakeholders early on. And by explaining what's in it for them, then that's how um, you'll be able to help
mm.
get the buy-in.
Well said, well said. And therefore, a related question for you, Shanil, is what, in your view, are some of the critical soft skills an ICT leader needs to have?
There are a lot of soft skills that an ICT leader
Mhm,
needs to have, but I would highlight only
mm,
three. So for me, number one, soft skill would be empathy.
mhm,
As I've mentioned earlier, stakeholders are important. So by showing empathy, you place yourself in the shoes of the other person. So you understand and you share the feelings of the other person or the stakeholder. So that's number one. Number two, being collaborative or being a team player. We always hear about the importance of this, but I just would like to underscore its importance. In real estate, they say the most important thing is location, location, location. In project management, the most important thing is stakeholder, stakeholder, stakeholder.
mm,
So that's number two, being collaborative. And then number three, having that learning mindset.
mhm,
So in ICT, there are a lot of new trends and emerging technologies that come, year in and year out. So having that learning mindset allows you to learn about these new trends, new technologies, and adapt to them accordingly. Otherwise, you'll be left behind.
mm. Well said. My next question is, how do you approach risk management in large scale and complex projects?
Um, as I said earlier, I'm a bit of an old school. So regardless whether it's a small scale or less complex project, I still do the same um, rigor in terms of risk management. So there are four main processes in risk management. Number one is you identify the risks by gathering data, talking with the key stakeholders, and so on. Number two, you assess those risks that you've gathered in
Mm,
terms of impact, probability, or likelihood. And then you set a risk rating for those risks accordingly. Number three, you treat the risk accordingly by taking the necessary strategic actions. So that can either be, you mitigate the risk by avoiding the risk, reducing, transferring, or even accepting the risk.
mm,
So it depends on the situation on what mitigation strategy you need to employ.
Mhm.
And then number four, you monitor and you report on the risk, especially on your key stakeholders, and make sure you revisit them accordingly.
Mm.
One thing that I would like to highlight is that so by doing all of these four processes in terms of risk management,
Mm.
um, there are three key things that I would say are important,
Mhm.
especially if the project you're managing is large scale and complex.
Mm.
So number one, so you identify the risks early on, be proactive.
Mhm.
So do not be reactive.
Mhm.
Number two, you prioritize the high impact risks.
Mhm.
So after you've identified and assessed the risk accordingly, make sure to prioritize which ones are the high impact ones. And then lastly, number three, uh, it's important to have regular monitoring
Right.
and taking action so of those risks accordingly.
Well said. My next question, Chaniel, is what role do you believe ICT plays in addressing global challenges such as sustainability and accessibility?
I believe ICT plays a big role in addressing these global challenges.
Mhm.
So I'll cite a few examples. Global challenges in terms of climate change and pollution, for example.
Mm.
So in terms of climate change, I've been seeing a lot of use and conversion in terms of utilizing renewable energies. So
Mhm.
we've seen a lot uh, in terms of the rise of electronic vehicles or EVs recently. And I believe this kind of technology will be commoditized soon.
Mhm.
So, in my personal opinion, EVs still cost a lot these days,
Mhm.
but I think few years down the line, they'll be almost, comparable to fuel-powered vehicles. And I think that's the trend or that's the way to go.
Mm.
Secondly, I talked about pollution. So I think technology plays an important role in terms of reducing emission, working alongside renewable technology.
Mhm.
So for example, I've seen one Australian airline saying that their goal by 2050 is to achieve net zero carbon emission by that time. So that's one company that I've seen having that goal. But
Mm.
there's also about, one or two more organizations that I've seen having the same goal. So I think, 20, 30 years down the line, we'll be seeing, more and more organizations contributing to this low emission environment by the use of technology.
Well said. So, I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is, how do you measure success in your projects and your initiatives?
There are two ways in which I measure success.
Mhm.
Number one, in terms of objectivity, um, as I said earlier, you can't improve it on something if you cannot measure it. So, being objective means you can quantify uh, success, and
Mm.
that's through gathering facts and gathering numbers.
Mm.
So in any project, you need to have a well-defined scope,
Mhm.
cost, and time. So you define that, you measure that, you baseline that,
Mm.
so that, when your project progresses and when you look back at another point in time, you can always go back against the baseline and measure how far you've gone. So that's number one in terms of measuring success objectively.
Mm.
And number two, and I think more importantly, I also measure success subjectively And that's through getting your customers' feedback. So objective measures the what, subjective measures the how.
Well said. Well said. And my last question to you, Chaniel, what are your thoughts on the future trends in ICT? And how do you think professionals should prepare for these new trends that are likely to come?
I think um, there will continue to be new trends in ICT. So earlier I talked about the rise of EVs contributing to renewable energy, and organizations contributing to less carbon emissions. But I've read in an article that some of the emerging trends to watch out for in the future would be about quantum computing, augmented reality and virtual reality, and blockchain as well. So I'm not an expert when it comes to these. I'm learning myself in terms of, watching out of these new trends.
Mhm.
But my key message is that, you know, we have to disrupt ourselves by educating ourselves and preparing to adapt or adapting to these changes
Mhm.
and preparing for the next revolution in terms of, these emerging technology.
Mm.
Otherwise, we'll be disrupted.
Very
So let
well.
me say it again. We have to disrupt ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be disrupted.
Well said. Chaniel, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for speaking to me at such length about so many different aspects of information and communication technology. We spoke a little bit about managing high performance teams. You gave some great pointers on risk management. And of course, you keep saying that you're from the old school, but I think you are very much in touch with what's really happening in the world now. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you for having me, Ashutosh, and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.